media. To take the lead in this panel, we have my colleague, Lisa Singer, who's from MediaPost, who's also a co-programmer of many of our shows. Lisa, we keep on getting you up early. You're on the left coast.
Yes, I know. I'm well aware of that. So, but no, it's so funny to be on this side of it, though. You know, like just I'm like, okay, when do I pop on? And but it's been great so far. Really good. You guys.
I'm going to hand it off to Lisa to get these guys. They're all queued up and they're great old pros, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. Take it away.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Well, hey guys, I can see you all here. And so Steve, obviously, you know, we're talking about just really getting that sustainable business and really expanding it. So before we get started with the questions, I just want to introduce everyone. So we have Michel Ballard. She is the Vice President and General Manager of Global Data Strategy and Monetization at Condé Nast. And then there's Michael Fabiano, Vice President and General Manager at the Associated Press. And we have Nicole Luber, the Vice President of Strategy at Bleacher Report. And then Ken Shapiro, the Chief Revenue Officer at Fandom. So hey guys, welcome. So all right, now let's just kick it right off with the basic question in terms of what are you doing to build that sustainable media business, you know, beyond selling the ad space. And Michael, I want to start with you. Just because I know AP, guys have been around for a long time. You're predominantly known as a news source. And I know as my work in a reporter, I was always looking to you guys to what's happening and what to do for breaking news. But I know that you are now trying to kind of be seen in a different light, or at least more so. Talk about that and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Lisa. And it's great to be here today. Thanks for having me. As you said, AP is a known and trusted brand, and we've been in business for 175 years. And the core of the business is primarily breaking news and long-form text licensing, photos and videos. So that's been the core of the business for so long. But we have moved over the last 10 years or so into an aggressive revenue diversification strategy. And I'll just run through a few of those things. First is advertising. We don't want to get in the way of our customers, but we do have some advertising on our website and our mobile app, and we're expanding into sponsorships there. So that's actually a growing area for us because most people don't realize that we're more like a cable company where we bill you weekly or monthly for your subscription. We have a brand new quantitative exit poll for the elections. Midterm elections are coming up in 2022. This really not just explains, you know, who won the elections, but why. So that is a new product for us. And so we're expanding our election services, our data services. Live video is big for us. We have a live video service, but it's in higher demand as there's more events around the world. We have an e-commerce service, but we're looking to expand that as well. NFTs were mentioned on the prior speaker, and we've got a ton of images and artwork. And it's not just about still images, it's also about motion. And we've actually been successful just launching a pilot around NFTs, and we think we've got a lot more to go there. And then services. We're a company that offers companies services for different kinds of things like research and fact checking. And those services are starting to expand for us right now. And that's probably the place you're going to lean into more into 2022, is how do we offer things like production services and writing and risk management. And people don't think of the AP as a kind of place that can do that. But those are areas that are natural for us to move into. And we also have launched some services for higher ed. We just launched a service for universities who can distribute videos from academics. So the goal for us is to have a more diversified revenue portfolio off of the core business.
Great. And so let's turn it to you, Nicole. Now, I know you would talk to me a little bit about partnerships at the Bleacher Report, but what else have you been doing? And go into that a little bit more deeply.
Sure. And thank you for having me. Yeah, and when we think about this, you know, we really think about building and finding new revenue streams. So within advertising itself, we have really evolved our offerings into branded content. We launched Playmaker, which is our branded content in-house production and creative studio a couple years ago. And that has really afforded us the ability to build deeper relationships with our partners. In a lot of instances, we're creating repeatable franchise series based on branded content that we've pitched to partners. So certainly branded content. And then I think even outside of the traditional advertising streams, things like events. So experiential has been a very big thing for us. Certainly not the last year and a half, but they're coming back next year and we're very excited about it. So we held our first event in 2017 around NBA All-Star Weekend on the Santa Monica Pier. And since then, again, in typical years, we put on about 6 to 8 events tied to major sport tentpoles. The ones that we're planning for in Q1 of next year are Super Bowl in LA and NBA All-Star Weekend in Cleveland. And that has really been a win-win, both from a business standpoint as well as a consumer standpoint. So we build these footprints around major sport moments and allow consumers to come through and kind of experience the BR and House of Highlights voice in real life, and then also give our partners an opportunity to activate within that space. So that has certainly been a great revenue stream for us. Licensing is another one. So we have built out a business development department and have had a handful of really successful licensing deals over the past few years, both in licensing our own content and then bringing partners into our environment. So a couple of examples are content licensing. So we have, put our content on other platforms. And then areas where we've brought partners in the fold, we have relationships with DraftKings and FanDuel. So we will promote, their betting lines, their odds, and we will push to their channels within our NBA, NHL, and NFL content. And then also being a sports publisher, ticketing is a big area for us as well. So we've had an official ticket partner where within our app and scores and schedules, we will push out to that ticket partner. And then lastly, e-commerce has been a really exciting kind of new initiative for us. So we have partnered with athletes and artists to collaborate on merchandise. And I think part of what's made it so successful is the business model we have set up is a rev share with the artists and athletes. So they're just as invested in, the success of the line as we are. They're very involved in the design and the promotion. So that's certainly an area that we're really excited about moving forward to.
Great. And so Ken, I'll turn it to you now as well. I mean, I know you guys have a special type of fan base, so you obviously have to stay in line with that. So what are you doing to sort of expand your business a little bit?
Yeah, totally. We're a community-based platform when you talk about fandom. And from our perspective, when we look at 2022, we're really thinking, we're talking about, focusing on our core categories, what we call our endemic business. This is really focuses on gaming, I'll call it TV/streaming and movies. Coming out of obviously a pandemic, people have consumed a ton of content about new shows, their favorite shows, new games, old games, things of that sort. So we've seen a massive uptick, I will say, within just the consumption on our platform. Grew over like 30-40% during the pandemic. So what we've really started to focus on is kind of what I describe as kind of like the full consumer life cycle. So when you search for something, and we were able to give you that reference content that you're looking for, how do we take that, that person from that search side and bring it all the way through purchase? So that's one of the big things. We're also focused a lot on our contextual information and our data. So we call it Fan DNA. So it's kind of our insights platform. So that's one of the things that we're really focused on. And then lastly, probably really about global expansion. One of the things I tend to talk about is that entertainment really is a global medium, and games launch globally, movies launch globally, shows do. So we've got, over half of our audience is outside the US. So how are we expanding, our presence in different markets? We've got real scale over there. So those are the things that we're focused on. And like Nicole, we're kind of excited about events coming back as well. We see that more on the Comic-Con side. So we see that coming into this direction for, I'll say, diversification as well. So we're looking forward to that.
Great. And now, Michelle, for you, I know Condé Nast, similar to Michael, you guys are a legacy brand. You guys have been around for a long time. So what are you doing to sort of shake things up there and expand?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I would say, similar to what Michael and Nicole and Ken spoke about, we're of course focused on sort of diversifying all of our revenue streams. But I thought it would be interesting, sort of by virtue of where I sit in the organization, it's really sort of at the intersection of data and our commercialization strategy. So I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about sort of what we're doing specifically from a data side of things to really drive all of the lines of business that we have. And I would say that, we've really built a lot of our data capabilities, specifically for the advertising part of the business with our performance marketing and insights platform that we call Spire. Although I like, Ken, your name for your data platform as well. But really, it's also a critical part of sort of how we drive our internal decisions, and really ultimately how we create sort of better user experiences for our consumers, which is really what's allowing us to grow revenue from our consumers in multiple ways, which is ultimately sort of at the core of our strategy for diversifying our revenue and ultimately building the sustainable media business. I wanted to give one specific example of one of the capabilities that we've built recently. And one of the ways that we're really using our data to create better user experience is on the social media side of things, which is obviously really important to us. Our data science team has developed an internal tool that we call Falcon. We love bird names, which is our AI tool that predicts content that's most likely to drive the highest engagement across our social media at any given point. And so we did this, one example is we did this in an instance where a celebrity couple had just gotten engaged, although not the one that happened yesterday that everybody's talking about. And this led to, huge engagement, 400% more than we typically see on some of our social media posts, specifically from Vogue. And, this is really just one way that we're using data to create new tools, new capabilities that's ultimately driving higher engagement with our consumers, which is really sort of at the core of our entire monetization strategy.
Great. And it's a lot you had been working on, I know with all of you I've spoken with, but I'm sure this past year has sort of triggered maybe other avenues for you. And even, just even Ken talking to you as far as, people were stuck inside now. So I'm sure you saw such an increase. Did that trigger more, other avenues for revenue because of what's been happening with COVID?
Yeah, it absolutely did. One of the things that, you recognize in the entertainment and gaming landscape, more and more stuff's going behind a subscription wall. So when you want to reach these fans or these audiences, it's actually getting harder and harder. And if you want the hardcore ones, if you wanted, to reach a Marvel fan, you're not to partner with Disney, obviously takes a lot, but we have a big audience like that. So kind of talking about what I was talking about before, like the fan DNA is able to reach these very contextually relevant segments. And then what we've also invested in a little bit is what we're defining as our interactive video, where fans can go deeper into all their different videos and link out to the communities and understand. I will describe, the lore that goes along with the show, how to get to the next level of a game and understand, where did it come from? Was it a comic book? Was it a movie? Was it a regular book? So we're finding that people are going deeper and deeper as they've been kind of holed up in the last year and a half with all of that type of information.
Yeah, and with Nicole, I'm sure, obviously because it's, sports and events, and so that obviously took a little bit of a dip, but at the same point, you needed to, engage people and keep that going. And do you feel like you've now built this fan base where you can get them not at an event, or built this audience that you can sort of start making revenue and moving forward and sticking with that?
Certainly, yeah. I think two of the biggest learnings that we had last year, I think initially, when everything kind of shut down, production was our biggest concern. We were lined up to shoot a lot of content with athletes on location. And so we quickly had to pivot to remote shoots, which we found surprisingly, a lot of our partners stayed on board with us, which was great. And we found the content actually performed better because in a lot of ways, as a sports fan, the content that we're creating, our users kind of crave this, inside look to the lives of these athletes, and they got it because we were, filming content with them over Zoom in their home. So that was one really great learning. That actually, even now, as things have started to open up, we are still approaching production from the mindset of, can we do this remote? Should we do this remote, or should we do it in person? So that was kind of a great learning moving forward. And then events as well. So last year for NBA All-Star Weekend, which is one of our big tent poles, being partnered with Turner Sports, we put on a 2-on-2 basketball tournament between, it was two rappers against each other, called Open Run. We filmed it in Atlanta in a bubble. There wasn't an audience. We live streamed it on Twitter and within our app. And it was sort of, it's an idea that we've been kicking around for a while, because there's this mindset that, all athletes want to be musicians and all musicians want to be athletes. So we, sort of put that on display, and, we saw our audience show up remotely for this, all-star event that we put on. That again is something that, as we're now looking to do, that we're bringing back in-person events. Now we've got kind of a playbook to create virtual events as well. So I don't think we're gonna, 100% move away from that.
Yeah, and for Michael, you talked about, production and just getting into, with the elections, what you did, but now you need to sort of, internally get people in line with doing that. Was that difficult for you to sort of synchronize everything and get people all on board, or was it a sort of a work in progress, or is it still?
Well, I mean, as far as COVID, we also learned, like Nicole, that we had some services that we could provide to the market that, like live, right? And not so much the production piece of it, just the infrastructure piece of it, which a lot of companies don't want to deal with. And so we found an expansion in that area. And yes, in production services, we found a lot of folks didn't want to travel during COVID, and we have people all over the world. So, we found that we can provide a larger suite of services for production. And it's not so much about the money, it's about time and speed. And everybody wants to get a documentary done for a streaming channel, and they want to reduce and compress the time frame. And we've got crews all over the world. But in terms of the transition into this, I mean, I think it's all been about change management, right? And it's been crucial to think about all the things we've been trying during the pandemic and the new businesses, and what's required to put the team in place and where it sits within the company. The location is really important. We found that it's hard to launch new initiatives if you don't have the right team, and sometimes you have to move it to a different team before you operationalize it. Lots of thinking about experimentation and crawl, walk, run approaches. And you also need to give these projects to people with passion, right? That are passionate about doing these things, and they want to take on, extra work. And I'm a big fan of voice of the customer feedback, right? Let the customer tell you if this is working or not. And so we've done a lot as we pivoted into some of these new areas to really listen to our customer base. And if it's going north, we keep going. If it's not going north, then we stop and we pivot. And the last thing I'm going to add to my list is, Michelle, you said have a cool internal name. We don't have cool internal names for projects, so we need to do a better job on that.
Well, tell us some more of your cool names, Michelle, but also I have to ask, as far as, because you are obviously, data is your wheelhouse. I mean, you look at your resume, this is what you know. And when you have to sort of, as you were talking about how you're really focusing on that, I can't imagine that, or maybe it is, but I can't imagine everyone surrounding you is as focused on data or as, knowledgeable. how do you then figure out where, again, back to internally getting everyone on board or knowing who needs to kind of work on what as you're sort of trying to combine all these different revenue?
Yeah, I would say, I think it's a great question. And for the record, I was giving Ken props for his cool name, not ours. But I would say, that's a huge focus of ours. But, I would say Condé has been investing in data for several years now. And so really what we're talking about is really an evolution of a strategy that we started maybe 5 years ago. And I would say, similar to what my colleagues were talking about, over the last 18 months, what we really saw is that, because of the data that we have sort of across, our 37 brands across 32 markets around the globe, we were really able to use the insights from our consumers to help inform our business strategy and how we were approaching them over the last 18 months. So, obviously the contextual signals that we get are obviously hugely important. We were able to tell when consumers were starting to have interest in traveling again, or, taking that road trip with their family over the summer. And so how do you use that data and information to inform our subscription marketing, strategy, or our affiliate and e-commerce strategy? And of course, how we're sort of, creating creative even for our advertisers. So I would say for us, it's really been an evolution, and the last sort of 18 months has really sort of just accelerated how we're using data to sort of drive the business.
Great. But in terms of going back on when you are instigating all these different revenue sources, or however you want to put it, but do you need to then bring more people in? Do you need to have another team? What are you doing to sort of have that all, because you have a group of people who are used to doing one thing, and then maybe you need to throw more stuff on top of it, or maybe it's not even things they're behind. Like, how do you then get everyone else on board and working forward?
I would say, similar to sort of what Michael said, our approach is typically to trial programs or products like Falcon I was talking about before. We piloted it on 1 or 2 brands within the US. We saw the results. We iterated on the data science models that were sitting behind that tool, and got the results to a place where we were really, happy with them in terms of how much engagement we were seeing from our consumers on social media. We then rolled it out to all of our brands in the US, and then are going to focus on rolling out to our brands outside of the US next year. So very much a test and learn and iterate approach, but our goal is always to get some sort of MVP out there as fast as possible to be able to get the results as quickly as possible and move it forward. And so I think by doing that, hopefully the goal is to show internally get people excited about what we're building, right? And what we can actually do for the business and their line of business, to get people sort of behind what we're doing, and hopefully get it to an even better place.
Great. And now, Nicole, you talked a little bit about, wanting to get back to live events and sports, and you mentioned the Super Bowl. So talk about that. Like, what are you thinking in terms of moving into 2022? What do you have more big events planned? And as you said, you were going to sort of hold on to what you also started doing online. Talk about how you're going to sort of mix that.
Certainly, yeah, and we're excited and sort of eager to see what LA and Cleveland look like in February. I think kind of similar to Michel's approach of kind of testing and learning, because we also want to see how consumers are reacting to back to in-person events. I think LA we feel great about because of the weather. Cleveland in February, we're trying to find kind of big spacious spaces where we can have kind of flow and things like that. But one of the things, so Bleacher Report and Turner Sports recently acquired NHL rights. So in terms of both content and events, one of the things I'm really excited about is, expanding into the hockey portfolio, both as, a marketer and as a fan. So kind of seeing how, Turner Sports and Bleacher Report can help build up the NHL, expose it to a newer audience. So, when we think about Stanley Cup finals in May, June, what that could look like. So we are planning on kind of a year-long calendar of events, probably highlighted by some new hockey events, but we certainly want to see how February in LA and Cleveland work before kind of committing to anything.
Again, sort of that test and learn kind of mentality to keep
Exactly
moving forward. So Ken, same for you. What are you guys planning for next year?
Yeah, right now we've our version of our Super Bowl, I will say, is San Diego Comic-Con. So that's in July. We usually put on a pretty good event there as well. But we're really hoping that's, back to its normal roots of, 250,000 people kind of going, descending on San Diego. And, a lot of it is outside, but that passion and that fan base that people want to interact with. And so from our perspective, really trying to bring our fans together with our hardcore fans, with kind of the regular fans that are there at the convention, talking about the new games coming out, talking about, the new shows that are there. That's the one we've got our eye on for 2022.
Great. And Michael, and as we're going in through all this, I do want to remind everyone watching, you still have the opportunity to ask these guys questions. So when we do finish up, there will be time for that. But just I want to get a couple more questions with you guys, but just a little reminder so people can start thinking. But anyway, Michael, I know, obviously the production end, you going to build more on that as we move forward?
Yeah, we're really excited about AP Productions. We're going to be moving into our third year, and we've just had an incredible reception in LA and around the world to us being a production company, essentially. And we partner best. We're not going to take the lead necessarily, but we're great partners in providing a suite of services. So I'm very excited about that. We've got, feature films in discussion and documentaries. So that'll be something we continue to add to. We are super excited. I am super excited that we will be back at the Super Bowl. I don't know if everyone knows, but we do the tabulation for NFL honors. We've been doing it for several years. And that's always an exciting event. And AP gets a lot of branding out of that. But we're excited that hopefully we'll all be back at the Super Bowl. So that's interesting. Live video, as I talked about, the midterm elections. I can't imagine there's not going to be a robust news cycle in 2022. We do the vote count. We have a product called Vote Count. We have Votecast. So, we're all in on helping to tabulate the elections in an unbiased manner. We provide all the data. And I didn't talk a lot about our data services, but we do a lot of data journalism now. And that's a big area for us, is providing national, local, and regional stories based on data and data visualizations. And that sort of leads us down a path to what can we do in business intelligence area. So we're looking for partners around business intelligence, and also how to sort of mine our incredible, we have this pipe that reaches 4 billion people on the planet every day, and it's got an enormous amount of data in it. And we've got to figure out how to use that for business intelligence services. So that's something that we've got to develop more pilots on.
You should talk to Michel a little bit on that.
I will.
She can help you there.
I was going to say, maybe we should compare notes.
Yeah. Project Falcon 2 at the AP.
Exactly. I love that.
Perfect. It sounds good. So I see I'm getting this all going. The synergy here with even you, with the brands.
There's going to be a lot of follow-up meetings.
Sounds good. Well, and Michel, finally for you, what's Condé Nast doing moving forward into 2022?
From my end, from the data side of things, one of our big areas of focus is, really how do we leverage our data across the globe that we have. Our team has been, very focused on the US market, and now starting to focus really across the globe. And so thinking about sort of our global footprint and being able to pull together all of these insights, being able to expand our tools and capabilities, not only from a targeting and insights perspective, but all the other tools that we have sort of outside the globe as well. And then I would say, also from an insights perspective, really thinking about how can we, take what we've done from the advertising side and continue to expand it to our subscription business and our affiliate business. And really, how do we take sort of the data science and teams that we have to really help propel some of these initiatives that we have. For example, we have an Allure beauty box where we sell people, our consumers makeup products, hair products. And so how can our team play a role in really making sure that, okay, if we look at the data of the boxes that have performed really well, for example, what do they have in common? What do we need to do differently? How can we really drive that business line by using a data informed approach? So those are some of the things that we're excited about doing next year.
Great. Well, I want to be able to bring Steve back on to see if we have any questions from the audience.
We do. We have one quick question I want to ask. I want to do it as a lightning round for all of you. Direct-to-consumer subscriptions. 2 years ago, it was the saving grace. Everybody was going behind a paywall. Ken, you mentioned that you're seeing more of the people you want and target for your content behind paywalls. So I want to ask all of you, are we starting to see what the natural limits of a subscription model are for those outside of the real big players, like the Disneys and the Netflixes? Do we know more now about what the limits of the subscription model are for you guys?
I mean, we know that the AP's content is heavily utilized behind the paywall, and we know from working with the big customers that they really want to own that customer and they don't want to let that customer go. So we're just seeing a lot more interest in not letting that content get outside of the paywall from our perspective.
Michelle, I know that Condé Nast has a big push on moving people behind the paywall. What do you know now that maybe you didn't know 2 years ago about what the challenges are there?
I mean, I think, at the end, we're still, I would say, sort of in the early days of testing different configurations on our subscription business. But I would say, because of sort of the test and learn approach, we're able to sort of see very easily and very quickly what's working from our consumers' perspective and what's not. And I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is develop very flexible systems from a technical perspective to be able to make changes that we need very quickly.
Anybody else want to take that? All right.
Ken or Nicole?
Okay. Well, we'll let it wrap. We'll let it stay there. We're going to be talking a lot about that tomorrow, by the way, with Gannett, about exactly how they're driving people into subscriptions and overcoming the challenges. Lisa,